A stillborn. That's what they told me I was. When I came out, I wasn't crying, or breathing, or reaching for my mother. There were no signs of life present. All the doctors and nurses tried desperately to get me back, to get a single breath from me. This all went down while my mother sat in her bed, pleading to get a look at my face, my gaunt and purple face. After nearly 10 minutes of the doctor's efforts and my mother begging them not to give up on me, I inhaled my first breath of fresh air. They had all but given up at that point, and just as the white flag was supposed to wave, there I was, a brand new child entering the world. My mother always told me as I grew up what a miracle I ended up being. She had never been the religious type before my birth, but she gained faith in that delivery room. A miracle. Every morning and every kiss goodnight, she would remind me. And when she would pull away from that kiss, I would see her, my still fairly young mother, and how she would look in the moments of her passing. It's hard for me to really explain it, because I've never known anything other than it. I don't know how regular people see the world around them. All I know is that it's different from me. It was scary for a long time. Every time a grown-up would tell me that monsters aren't real, I would want to tell them that they were the monster that haunted me. You can get used to anything over time, and some days I operate under a sense of normalcy. But there's always some new, horrific tragedy waiting right around the corner. One that hadn't even happened yet. A fated roll of the dice upon some unsuspecting victim. I became acutely aware of my little miracle pretty shortly into my life, as soon as I was able to understand the world around me. Conscious thought forming the tapestry of my life. My mother had a sister, and whenever she would come around, I would see rivers of green foam spilling from her mouth. I hated when she would try to lean in for a kiss. Her skin was a similar color to the sick pouring from between her lips, the whites of her eyes a disgusting yellow. After a few years, my mother's sister ended up passing away. I had overheard some of the adults speaking with each other about her overdose, about the way her stomach lining broke down, and the disgusting color her skin had changed. I never saw her, of course, but it was hard to deny that what I had been seeing ended up as her fate. My upbringing was normal other than that. I tried to keep the way I saw people to myself, as it became apparent that no one else saw them that way. When I was little, I would try to point out how scary people looked to my mom, describing their features, and she would always retort that my imagination was too wild, that I should think of nice things. Nothing would have made me happier. I learned a few things about my special set of rules regarding my vision. Though I could see the visual effects of someone's death, I couldn't see them at the time of their death. Children would still look like children to me, even if they were going to die as full-grown adults. So, as I went to school and sat with all the other kids in my class, I tried my best not to fall ill as I looked around the room. The kid who sat in front of me every day was wearing different clothing, but the fabric would be stained with 3 dark red spots. The shirts would be torn, as if something ejected out of his back. He would turn around to face me sometimes, ask me for a pencil, or try to start a small conversation. There would be one more dark dot adorning his face, right in the middle of his forehead. When I grew up, I looked up his name and found his obituary from our hometown. He must have fallen in with the wrong people. 3 bullets to the stomach and 1 to the head. That's how he went out. So many children in the classroom looked like they would fall to terrible fates. The weirdest things were when someone lost a limb. I would see objects start floating in the air in front of them. They still had their arms, but I couldn't see them, as they died without them. Like when I interviewed for my first job, and I held out my hand to offer a shake, I felt fingers wrap around mine despite not seeing it. There was a massive disconnect between my head and my mind. I had to play pretend a lot. Pretend to walk around like a normal human being with nothing special going on. Just a face in the crowd. I've thought about trying to monetize my gift. Maybe some sort of fortune-telling business where people could discover how they died. I soon learned that wouldn't work, though. The first time someone took my rambling seriously, I noticed their body changed. Previously, they had large gashes in their chest that ran almost to the bone. When warning them about a possible animal attack, they said they were planning to go on a hiking trip, but would avoid it thanks to me. The gashes on their chest vanished like a wisp of vapors, and then a wound opened in their throat. I could see small scrapes all over their body, and their head became dented. I recognized this as damage similar to a car crash. Sure, I might have given him more time on this earth, but there's no telling if it would always turn out that way. Maybe I could warn someone about an event, and in their attempts to avoid it, they ended up dying earlier. I just couldn't risk it. Ultimately, everybody dies. There's no telling when my visions even take place. I might know how, but the when is uncertain. Of course, not everyone on Earth is going to meet some grisly and gore-filled end. Some people die on the inside. Something pops in their head, and they'll just drop to the floor. Some people die peacefully in their sleep. Those are the type of people I found myself getting close to and making friends with. Surrounding myself with them was the only real way to find any normalcy in my life. Then, eventually, my mother passed on. I was upset to hear that it happened, but I wasn't exactly surprised. Like I mentioned, not everyone had grisly wounds, but my mother's internal damage made its way out of her body. I always saw her with those thin trails of red tears running down her cheeks. Ironic that she found religion after my birth in that kind of way. I've been around for a while, and I've mostly gotten used to the horrors constantly on display around me. I know what you're wondering, though. Does anything ever unsettle me? What are the most messed up and alarming causes of death I've seen? Do I ever intervene, knowing I might change a thing for the worse if I see something bad enough? Yes, I still get unsettled. As much as I try to shut it out, I am nothing more than a human. I still get chills if I see something particularly gnarly. Like when a local barista turned around to take my order. I watched his lips move, tried to ignore that half of his head was missing. Like someone had cut him cleanly on a slant, leaving one eye and portions of his nose. I could see his brain resting in the other visible half, all gray and shifting as he spoke. It was difficult to drink the coffee I'd ordered. I saw a set of twins once. Their mother said they do everything together. So I guess I shouldn't have been shocked that they died the same way. Judging by their mother's skin complexion, they weren't supposed to have charred and chipping skin. Dark leather that had been sitting sun-washed in some random alley for years. I could almost see the smoke rising off their bodies, and the bright embers resting just under their skin. No, I normally try not to intervene. Even if things look terrible, there is no guarantee that I don't make things worse. The only time I'll try to step in is if the wounds I notice appear to be self-inflicted. If someone had deep grooves lining their wrist or red imprints around their neck, I try to be a little nicer to them. I compliment them or ask if they want to hang out sometimes. It doesn't always work. Some people carry other curses. Sometimes it does, though. And while the wounds that replace them aren't always prettier, I can pretend I made them just a little happier that day. All my life, I've known annihilated limbs and severed heads. Every day I leave the house, I enter into some grotesque Halloween horror show. Some wounds, they trouble me, though. Sometimes, people are just different. The way their bodies are twisted and mangled looks like boulders have been dropped on them. I see skin stretched and torn, with most of their abdomen missing. The deaths where I can't for the life of me figure out what's going to happen to the person always get on my nerves. Like a woman passing by that had several lumps poking out all over her skin, like needles were trying to get out. Some people walking around look normal until they set their eyes on me. They glow a deep amber, and their skin goes pale, and suddenly I feel like I'm the one being observed. It's like they're visually whispering to me, letting me know that they know. It's no use worrying too much about it, though. Who am I to say what bizarre forces lurk in the shadows of this world? After all, it's likely I am one of those forces. You have one more question, though, don't you? If I can see the way everyone will die, then what do I see when I look in the mirror? I hate to disappoint you. It's far more anticlimactic than you're likely expecting. I've looked in many mirrors, but to be honest, I'm not sure what I look like. Every time I see a reflection, I don't see myself. There's nothing there. As if I was plucked right out of this reality when I die. Or maybe I was never really living. I've always had one foot in the grave and my eyes on the future.